Okay, thank you, and welcome to Perry High School for tonight's social media awareness presentation, which is a collaboration with Gilbert Police Department and CUSD, specifically Perry High School and Payne Junior High School, or Payne Junior High. Thank you for being here. We're going to cover a lot of great and helpful information tonight for parents, and so we appreciate you taking time out of your day to be here. I am Heather Patterson. I am the principal at Perry High School, and I'm going to introduce the CUSD people that are here with us tonight. Lisa Paella, the principal at Payne Junior High. Mark Hewish, the Director of Safety and Security. Natasha Davis in the front row. She's the Director of Counselors and Social Services. And then in the back, we have the Perry SRO, Officer Allen. So now I would like to welcome Bert Matlin, Crime Prevention for Gilbert Police Department, and Sergeant Scott Gallus, SUV Unit Supervisor, to the stage.
Hi, good evening. Wanted to thank everybody for showing up here in person and thank those of you that are online watching. Before we get started, just wanted to kind of introduce myself and let Sergeant Gallus do the same. As you can see, my name's Bert Matlin. Retired from Tempe Police Department in 2018. I spent the majority of my career there as a detective. Several years there working internet crimes against children and other child-related crimes. I was actually the first ever internet crimes against children detective for the Tempe PD, and got to see firsthand the kind of damage that these cases can inflict on victims, friends, and family. And that was really, once I got here over to the Gilbert Police Department, now part of the Crime Prevention Unit, my experience there was really kind of what drove me to want to put this together and get this information out. Sarge?
Good evening, everybody. Forgive me in advance. I usually don't use a microphone, so this is a little strange to me. My name's Scott Gallus. I'm the Special Victims Unit Sergeant at the Gilbert Police Department. I've been there for 21 years, and I've been in this current role for almost 4 years. Bert came to me a few months ago, and we kind of came to the conclusion that we do a real good job of the cases that come into us, but we don't do a real good job of getting out in front of audiences and kind of proactively working on prevention for some of the crimes that we see in my unit. So the goal of tonight is just to give some preventative information to be helpful for you and your teens. I also want to note that this presentation is kind of designed to be given to teens in the schools. So some of the slides you're going to find might seem like they're geared towards teenagers, and that's kind of by design. This is kind of a dry run for us, and the intention is to get some feedback and see how successful we are or aren't tonight, and if we are successful, roll this out to teenagers after the fact. We've got a QR code. I think they passed it out as well for questions. So if you're not comfortable raising your hand, asking a question when we're done, that's a good way, a good mechanism for us to get questions so that we can answer, hopefully, any questions anybody has.
And for those of you online too, I believe there's a link to submit a question. We have our PIO, Officer Levi Leba, and Sergeant Lorenzo Taruya. Excuse me, sorry, I butchered the last name already. From our PIO office, as well as Brenda Carrasco, good Lord. They are going to help us get those questions up here once they're asked, so please don't hesitate. All right, so once again, like I said, I spent about 5 years investigating exploitation cases involving kids, most of it internet related. Interesting side note, everybody remember when Shaquille O'Neal was playing for the Suns? Okay, do you know that Shaquille O'Neal worked for the Tempe Police Department when he was here? Okay, Shaq was my partner for 2 years. Extremely bizarre situation. We would sit in our office and he and I would pretend to be 13-year-olds online and communicate with adults and made several arrests. But again, it was a very bizarre experience, but a good one. He's a very good guy and very focused on keeping kids safe online. So again, the reason that we're here tonight is to try to prevent exploitation. And That can mean several different things. All right, so this is a quote. Sexual exploitation of children is a despicable crime that may go unrecognized by friends and family of the victims. In this digital age, it is imperative that we stay informed of the deception and other tactics sexual predators use to harm our children. Victims of sextortion may feel confused, embarrassed, and as if they have no escape. I strongly urge parents and caregivers to engage with the children in their lives to discuss this crime and help law enforcement agencies prevent the abuse before it happens. And that's Zachary Myers, AUSA from the Southern District of Indiana. One of the reasons he put this out is we saw such a massive uptick in sextortion cases in this country. The FBI actually put out a public health advisory over it. And as you're going to see, statistically, those numbers are not getting better. They continue to grow, and they continue to grow significantly. All right, so back in my day, this is what stranger danger looked like. Pretty easy. Hey, white panel van, somebody offering free candy or anything else, that's a no-go. Stay away. Unfortunately for our kids today, this is what stranger danger is. I can't tell you how many times I investigated a case, and Sergeant Gallus can speak to this as well, of people online pretending to be a pretty female or a pretty male in order to gain access to a kid. Where am I pointing? Okay, so just some basic statistics. You're going to see over here on the left, there's a whole bunch of logos here, and these are just a few of the social media applications that are out there right now. It would probably take us, we could go over an hour discussing all of the new social media apps that constantly come up. So just be aware. There's plenty of platforms out there for kids to use, and by using them, potentially exposing themselves. So you see 95% of all kids in the United States say that they either have or have access to a smartphone. 90% either a desktop or laptop computer, and 80% on a gaming console. So that's up 73% in 2014 to 2015 said they had access. That's at 95% now. All right, so we don't want to have anybody yell out answers, but I just want you to think these in your head. Average age in this country, somebody gets their first smartphone. I'm not talking a flip phone. I'm talking an actual fully capable 4G or 5G smartphone. How many hours per day 13 to 17-year-olds spend on their devices? And to clarify, this is not doing research or schoolwork. This is just online, surfing, social media, you name it. Average number of social media platforms that people use. The percentage of people who use a mobile device to access social media, and the percent of 13 to 17-year-olds that reported that they use social media. Does everybody have an idea what those numbers might be? All right, so 11 years old. That's the average age in this country that someone gets their first smartphone. Full, unfettered access to the internet. Your average 13 to 17-year-old spends 9 hours online. And that's not school related. That's not anything else. Your average social media user utilizes at least seven different platforms. So you can do the math. 9 hours a day, 7 different platforms. That's a lot of potential exposure. 99% of people say they have access to social media. 90% of 13 to 17-year-olds say that they utilize social media on a regular basis. All right, so since 2016, we've had more than 260,000 reported incidents of enticement, mostly sextortion cases, according to the National Center for Missing and Exploiting Children. That's NCMEC. However, between 2019 and 2021, those numbers doubled. And as you're going to see in one of the upcoming slides, we're getting ready to double those numbers again in less than a year. All right, since 2022, 79% of all the perpetrators of sextortion scams are demanding money. So when I was investigating these cases back in 2008, 9, 10, most of these people were demanding additional content from their victims, and now it's become very largely money-driven. All right, just this last year, 2022, there were over 7,000 reported cases to the FBI of sextortion where the victim was under the age of 18 in this country. And in 2022, more than a dozen kids in this country who took their lives because they were a victim of a sextortion scam. So per estimates from the FBI, there are about 500,000 predators online every day. And when I say predator, I mean somebody that is actively online looking to communicate with somebody in order to victimize them. 25% of 13 to 17-year-olds reported that they at one point have at least received one message or unwanted solicitation from someone about sex or explicit images. To date, we've got over 10 million Americans that have been threatened with having intimate photos of them shared online, and many of these are under the age of 18. Five % of school-age kids report that they were actual victims of sextortion. However, only 15%, the FBI estimates, are actually reported. So by doing the math, 7,000 victims last year, and that's only 15%. So in actuality, we're probably at about closer to 50,000 victims under the age of 18 of sextortion in this country in the calendar year 2022. All right, when we're talking about sextortion, about a quarter, 1 in 4 victims reported that they were under the age of 13 when they were threatened. Almost half of these perpetrators follow through on their threats. So if you refuse to provide content, if you refuse to pay, you're looking at about a 50-50 chance of whether or not your images are going to get blasted across social media. All right, 1 out of 3 victims reported that these threats lasted 3 months or longer. And half of these victims say that they are threatened several times a day, a quarter saying that they received 10 to 19 threats per day. So if you can imagine a school-age kid, 13 to 17, or sometimes even younger, with all the things that they've got to deal with in life, being bombarded 10 to 19 times a day for 3 months over something like this. All right, you're going to see some things in here that, again, I put in here twice, and that's by design. So 7,000 cases that we know of in this country in 2022 where kids were under the age of 18 and were victims of a sextortion scam. Again, they estimate now it's more likely than 100,000 cases that went unreported. And that can be for a variety of reasons. Obviously, embarrassment is huge, not wanting to get in trouble. It's one of the reasons why kids don't report these things. So as of October 2023, like I said, we're looking to double our numbers already. We've got 12,500 cases in the US where kids were under the age of 18 when they were victimized. Yeah, so there was a question about the definition of sextortion. That's going to come up here in one of the next slides. And again, for those of you that are keeping score at home, by the end of 2022, we will have once again doubled our numbers of victims in this country from sextortion scams under the age of 18. So from 2019 to 2021, it took 2 years. We're on pace to break that in a single year. I'm going to turn this over to Sergeant Gallus.
Very good timing. We police officers, we do this thing where we use acronyms all the time, and we use words that is just like police jargony language, and we take for granted that everybody knows what we're talking about, when in fact you don't, and I'm glad because it's terrible topics. So to somebody's question, sextortion. Traditional sextortion occurs when a victim is threatened or blackmailed into providing more explicit imagery. The predator threatens to share the explicit images with the public or on the victim's other social media accounts. Financial sextortion occurs when a predator demands money or gift cards in exchange for keeping these images private. So in general, what we see is the suspect, whether it's actually a female or a male posing as a female, will create an online profile on social media depicting an attractive female, and that profile will start friending teenage boys and sometimes teenage girls with the intent to commit this act against them. And the way that they do that is they engage in friendly conversation. It progresses very quickly into sexualized conversation. And then they start to solicit imagery, whether it's videos or still images of the juvenile. And as soon as the juvenile does, they start to reveal who they really are. And they start to make threats and say, if you don't continue to send me additional nude content, or you don't continue to send me money via whatever metric they want, Apple Cards or Venmo or the Cash App, what they threaten to do is they threaten to expose the juvenile to their social circles. So they'll send these images to their social media friends and things like that. And some juveniles pay, or some juveniles consult with their parents and decide to pay. Others don't. Either way, they're at risk of being exposed via social media. In a recent analysis, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, financial extortion is hugely on the rise. This used to be something that was done specifically to gain additional nude content, but there are literal call centers in other countries in the world that participate in this scam where everybody in their own cubicle is trying to extort money out of juveniles worldwide. And that's the primary motivating factor now. I want to go over a couple other laws because I think that there's some misinformation out there. And I talked to a lot of parents of a lot of these cases, and I've heard kind of some of the same themes over and over again. So one of the things I want to talk about is the unlawful disclosure of images depicting juveniles. So it is unlawful in Arizona for a person to intentionally disclose an image of another person who is identifiable from the image itself or from information displayed in connection with the image if all of the following apply. So before we move on, I want to talk about if you are identifiable or if you're identifiable by additional information. Something as simple as a nude image with a face depicted is somebody who's identifiable, but you can also be identifiable by the caption that accompanies the image. So even if my face was not visible, but my nude body was, and it says, here's a nude photo of Sergeant Scott Gallus, that contextual information makes me identifiable, and it checks that first box for this statute. So if all of the following apply, it's illegal in Arizona to do this. The person in the image is depicted in a state of nudity or is engaged in specific sexual activities. Oh, we're missing a slide. All right, there's two other things. The second category is the person who's depicted has a reasonable expectation of privacy. So in Arizona, that phrase, reasonable expectation of privacy, essentially means when I sent that image of myself, I didn't expect it to be disclosed. I thought I was engaging in a private communication with somebody else, and I trusted that other somebody else to not disclose that image to anybody else. That constitutes reasonable expectation of privacy. The third part of the statute is if the photo is disclosed with the intent to harass or coerce a person into doing something else, then you have committed this crime. Now, where that's important is when our juveniles are sending these photos out, they lose absolute control over that content, and they can't control what that person who receives it does with it. So in the state of Arizona, if that person who's receiving that content discloses these images to the juvenile's social media, they have committed this crime, which is, well, the previous crime. which is a felony. The next statute, which is even a more important one in Arizona because it's criminalized very heavily and the penalties associated with it are very heavy, is sexual exploitation of a minor. A person commits sex exploitation of a minor by knowingly recording, filming, photographing, developing, duplicating any visual depiction in which a minor is engaged in exploitive exhibition or other sexual conduct. Part 2 is distributing, transporting, exhibiting, receiving, selling, purchasing, electronically transmitting, possessing, or exchanging any visual depiction in which a minor is engaged in exploitive exhibition or other sexual conduct. Arizona Revised Statutes is really fancy with their language, but exploitive exhibition essentially means a focus on the genitals or engaged in some sort of sexual act. So this, when we have a case of sextortion and we have an adult suspect who's dealing with a juvenile, if they know contextually by conversation that the person that they're talking to is under the age of 18 and they solicit nude content, they're committing this crime. This is something that we investigate quite a bit, and it's criminalized very heavily in Arizona. If folks take this to trial, the presumptive minimum sentence for one image or one video is 10 years in prison. I want to go back real fast before we move on to the real life scenario. The unlawful disclosure of images. I talk to a lot of parents who are reluctant to report what's happened to their teenager because they believe that their teenager has engaged in child pornography by taking photos or videos of themselves and sending it out on the internet to whoever they're communicating with. I want to be very clear, and I can't speak for all police departments in Arizona, but I can speak for the Gilbert Police Department. We do not criminalize the behavior of juveniles when they're being threatened by predators who are adults. It is not at all child pornography for a juvenile to take a picture of themselves and send it out onto the internet. That's not at all what that law is criminalizing. This law is criminalizing adults who are trying to take advantage of minors. So if that's something, a thought in your head, or you've heard somebody say that, that's absolutely untrue and not how we treat these cases. So we're going to go over a couple scenarios. These are real-life cases. This is a case from Michigan. Jordan DeMay was a high school senior. He grew up in an affluent neighborhood. He was the homecoming king, if I'm not mistaken, and he was a football star. This is a community very similar to Gilbert, and this is a victim of sextortion. Jordan took his own life at the hands of what was going on to him, and we're going to watch a little video here that kind of depicts a little bit of the story.
Nigerians in U.S. custody, appearing in federal court today. Authorities say they ran a sextortion scheme that targeted 100 people, including Jordan DeMay, a 17-year-old high school athlete bound for college, who shot himself to death last year. Jordan's mother living any parent's worst nightmare.
The entire situation has been awful. There's so many emotions involved with grief. I have had some difficult moments, but at the end of the day, we were able to get some answers as to what happened to Jordan, and a lot of families don't get that.
After the FBI tracked the suspects down, the Biden administration convinced the Nigerian government to extradite them.
It's absolutely incredible what the Department of Justice and our FBI did to track down these individuals, arrest them, and then to get them here.
22-year-old Samuel Ogashi and his 20-year-old brother Samson Ogashi, both of Lagos, are charged in a 4-count indictment. The elder Ogashi is facing a mandatory minimum 30 years in prison. The younger, at least 5 years.
And make no mistake, charges of this type brought against subjects outside the United States are rare. Securing extradition of these subjects is even more rare.
The indictment says the men posed as a young woman on Instagram, striking up an online relationship with DeMay, even as they gathered information about his school, friends, and family. After tricking him into sharing explicit photos, they threatened to blast those photos out to friends and relatives unless he sent them money. The accused, using the name Danny Roberts, writing, I have screenshots of all your followers and tags. Can send these nudes to everyone and also send your nudes to your family and friends until it goes viral. All you've got to do is cooperate with me and I won't expose you. Are you going to cooperate with me? Just pay me right now and I won't expose you. DeMay asks, how much? The suspects reply, $1,000. DeMay sending $300, not enough to satisfy his tormentors, according to the indictment. They add, goodbye, enjoy your miserable life. DeMay replying, I'm killing myself right now because of you. The suspects, good, do that fast, or I'll make you do it, I swear to God. Prosecutors say there is more to come.
This isn't the only case. There are a number of other similar sextortion cases that the Nigerian government is cooperating with the U.S. Department of Justice and the FBI on in terms of investigating it and trying to secure justice.
Jordan's mother wants parents to talk frankly to their kids about the risks of sharing explicit images.
Families need to sit down and talk about sextortion. This happened to a senior. It can happen to your kids. If they have access to the internet and social media, they can be a target of this. Have open conversations, let your children know that if this does happen to them, even if they proceed with things, go to an adult because it happens so quickly that you just don't even see it coming.
And Ken Delanian joins us now from D.C. So Ken, how big a problem is this nationwide and what advice are authorities giving to parents?
Gabe, FBI officials say there are thousands of cases of sextortion a year, and it's gotten so bad they issued a public safety threat about it. And authorities say it's really important for parents to talk with their kids about the risks of sharing explicit photos. And if they are targeted, the FBI says save all the messages and report it immediately. And the larger message to teens is that, look, as horrible as it feels, if explicit pictures of you are shared, you are not alone and there is life after pictures.
So the sad reality is we investigated a lot of these cases in my unit, and a lot of these cases do in fact come back to Nigeria. We've had other cases come back to Cuba, Morocco, some other countries. And we don't have the ability to exercise a ton of control. This case with these arrests is actually a pretty extraordinary circumstance that we were able to identify suspects and extradite them. But I don't want to get to be naive and have our head in the sand and believe that this isn't something that's not perpetrated by local suspects either. So we had a case in 2021 in Gilbert, and the case has been adjudicated, so we can talk about it. This is Jordan Zambrano. Jordan was an 18-year-old. He lived in Queen Creek, but he attended school here in Gilbert. And he perpetrated this scheme, including against several of his own classmates. He created a Snapchat profile under the name Diane Reed, and he started friending people through a Snapchat feature called Quick Add. And all Quick Add is a geographic feature, and to the kids in the room, I'm probably explaining this incorrectly, but it's a geographic feature where you can add friends based on how close you are to them geographically, and it makes it real convenient where if I'm friends with Burke, I can quick add any of Burke's friends as well. So this spider web of his social media network grew very quickly. So he posed as a woman or a girl named Diane Reed. He solicited explicit content after engaging in sexual contact with these boys, and as soon as they did so, he started demanding additional sexual content. Jordan was an interesting case because he wasn't financially motivated. He was actually motivated by the sexual content itself. And what he would do is he would say, I need you to get on a Facebook live stream, and I need you to perform sexual acts at the same time as another victim. You're going to join another victim on this live call. And the other victim was Jordan, and he was pretending to be a victim when the whole time he was the suspect purporting himself to be Diane Reed. He did this to dozens of local juveniles, including several of his own classmates from his own high school. One of his victims he took advantage of to the degree that he convinced this victim to meet him in person, engage in sex acts, and videotape them because Diane Reed said they're going to divulge our photos if we don't do it. We asked him in an interview upon his arrest, why did you single out this victim specifically? And he said, I don't know, I just felt like I could control him more than the other victims. One of the interesting wrinkles of this case is we identified all the other victims from Jordan's Snapchat account, and none of the other victims had reported this crime to police yet. Dozens of victims had participated in this scam, were victimized by Jordan all over the country, but to include locally. And none of them, except for the first victim that we had, reported this to us. So the statistics that we saw earlier about the underreporting of this crime, that only 10 or 15% of people report this crime, is the absolute truth. Jordan was convicted. He didn't get a very long sentence because he was very young and didn't have a criminal history. But it was an interesting case that happened locally and included those interesting wrinkles of meeting in person and actually putting hands on a victim, which is a bit extraordinary.
Thanks, Sarge. Okay, so this is another local example. This was my case. I investigated this when I was a sworn detective. So 2015, I got a tip from the Iowa Department of Public Safety that they had 3 boys that were in the age range of 11 to 12 that were all on the same sports team that had been communicating with somebody they believed to be an attractive blonde female. I can't remember what name he was using at this time. But there's Adam. There's your attractive female that was communicating with these boys. Department of Public Safety in Iowa had said that all 3 of these boys had provided this suspect with explicit images or videos, and that this suspect was now trying to blackmail them into providing more. In addition to that, he wanted these victims to introduce him to more of their friends so he could continue to get more content. In typical sextortion, he's threatened to blast these images, these videos out to these kids' social media pages. And to kind of piggyback on what Sergeant Gallus said, anybody have an idea of the #1 country in the world where social media is used? What do you think it is? It's not the United States, I can tell you that. It's Nigeria. And the fact that these people, again, like Sergeant Gallus said, there are call centers of these people. It's almost like they're punching a time clock. They're going to work to try to monetize these scams, and they are very good at what they do. And so was Adam. So through some investigation, I was able to identify this gentleman who lived in Tempe. He was in his early 20s. Whoa. It took me about 3.5 months after we made the arrest and we seized his electronic devices. It took me 3.5 months to go through his chat history and his social media history because he had been active for years. And I was able to identify well over 100 victims. Most of them were here in the continental United States. Some of them were abroad. And when I reached out to actually speak with them, once they were either adults or their parents, if they were still juveniles, like Sergeant Gallus said, none of these incidents had been reported. So Adam had been operating this scam for approximately 3 years without anybody knowing about it. So we arrested him. He was released on bond. He ended up cutting his ankle monitor. Fortunately, the United States Marshals located him in California, extradited him back here, and he's currently in prison. And when I contacted kids and parents, I was contacting parents of police officers, of teachers, of corporate executives, and their kids. These are good kids. They'd never been in trouble. They were good students. No one was aware that this had happened to them. All right, so we're going to cover some warning signs, all right? Some things specifically for you school-age kids that are in the room right now. Warning signs, things that should raise a humongous red flag if you're online. Anybody who randomly approaches you on social media claiming to be a friend of a friend or sharing similar interests, school, family, etc., that should raise a huge red flag to you. Do not ever communicate or accept a friend request from somebody that you do not know. And I'm sure that this is in here already, but I'm going to say it again. Parents and kids, if you have access and your kids have social media accounts, they need to be private. There's absolutely no reason for somebody under the age of 18 to have a social media account that is accessible to anybody on this planet. You have absolutely zero control over who sees what you post. None. So make sure that those accounts are private. You want to add friends and people that you know face to face that you are absolutely 100% sure, yes, this person exists and I know who they are, knock yourself out. Do not ever randomly accept. I know a lot of platforms count how many likes you have, how many friends you have, and in today's day and age, social media is not going away, okay? It's with us, it is what it is, and a lot of people, they get a lot of self-esteem. It makes them feel good. Hey, I've got over 1,000 friends on Facebook or Instagram. Okay, well, how many of those people do you actually know? How many of those people have you actually met? I would say a very small percentage in most cases. Any conversation that starts off, they befriend you, and then they're moving very quickly, moving the conversation very quickly to try to get explicit images or content from you. This is one of the biggest red flags, moving your communication to a different platform. So as I said earlier, there's a ton of different social media platforms out there. A lot of them are not here in the United States, and what that means for law enforcement, what's the name of the new one from France?
I don't even remember. I'd have to look
There's
it
a
up.
new one that's popping up, and it's French-based. So we here as the town of Gilbert, if we have somebody who's been victimized on this platform and we contact the French government, hey, I need the subscriber information for this user. What do you think the French government's going to tell us? Go pound sand. They're not going to provide it to us. So any conversation that wants to be moved to one of these apps, Kik is another one. Kik is in Canada. They do not keep any user information. They will provide basic subscriber information. All the other data on their platform is encrypted. So it's, again, it's useless to us for law enforcement to try to identify somebody. Some of the tactics that these people use. And I put this picture in here, or one of our sergeants put it in here, because in actuality, this is what these people truly are. They're predators. Okay, humongous red flag, the reciprocation. I will show you if you show me. My case, Adam, he had gone to great lengths to create this profile of this female. Very attractive. And then he had images, nude images. Was never able to determine if it was the same. Didn't matter because it didn't have her head. He was still providing them. I'll show you if you show me, okay? Huge red flag. Somebody that contacts you and says, hey, I saw your photo. I think you would do really good in the modeling industry, and I want to help you out, okay? Very rarely is that ever going to happen. Nobody is going to proactively reach you out and start asking for photographs of you just based on your social media accounts. Again, one of the tactics of these people is they're going to try to develop a bond quickly, but they're going to try to bond with you, and it's going to sometimes seem like they know exactly what you're going through. Oh, I'm having problems with my parents too, or yeah, math sucks. Okay, they're gonna set up a very common bond with you to gain your trust. Okay, again, somebody that you do not know and have never met that is seeking your friendship or trying to create a bond with you, you got to be incredibly suspicious of this. Am I saying that it's not out of the realm of possibility that this isn't legit? No. But the probability of this being a predator, I would say, is well over 99%. All right, let's get past there. But a lot of these predators, again, they will use multiple different identities to contact you. When I was working chat investigations, I was online posing as a 13-year-old girl and was contacted by another similar aged female. Very quickly, the conversation turned to the, hey, I want you to tell me, do I look nice? I'll show you if you show me. Of course, as a law enforcement officer, I can't provide photos like that because I myself would be breaking the law. But then the conversation turned to, hey, I know a guy, he's really cool. I bet you that you'd have a lot of fun with him. He's going to contact you. That user signed off, another user signed on. I got an instant message, hey, I heard you were talking to so-and-so. Very clear to me I was talking to the same person, but somebody that obviously doesn't have a lot of life experience may not understand that. All right, so obviously a lot of these people are going to pretend to be younger and members of the opposite sex, okay? I know Sergeant Gallus is not a fan of this image. Maybe it's because of the zipper. But here's Susan. As you can tell, she looks a relatively attractive young lady. He's actually a 42-year-old man, and oh, by the way, they just made plans to meet with your 13-year-old at a local park. A lot of times, too, with these public accounts, we see people that are trying to unlawfully access people's accounts to gain access to their videos or images. I guess the moral of the story here is don't take pictures of yourself, explicit pictures of yourself with your mobile device. Even if you're saving them for your own personal storage or whatever, just don't do it. It's not worth it. There was a big case or big incident many, many years ago where a whole bunch of celebrities across the world got their iPhones or iClouds hacked because somebody had sent out a phishing email saying, I'm part of Apple and your password's been compromised. You need to click this link and verify it. They clicked the link and unknowingly they gave these people access to their entire iCloud. Another thing that we're starting to see with the development of AI and the advancement of technology, again, if your accounts are public and you post a picture of yourself, that picture can very easily be taken by someone and manipulated into something that you did not intend that picture to look like. Okay? So another reason to keep those accounts private. So I harped on this before. I'm going to say it again. Always be aware of who you are friending online, because a random person that reaches out to you, there's a very high likelihood that they're looking to victimize you. And things are not always what they seem. So this gentleman, he travels, owns his own home, right? That's what his dating profile says. Sarge?
All right, we're going to go through these last few slides kind of quickly because I know everybody's time is valuable, and I want to make sure we have time for a few questions. Maybe? There we go. Again, never share any explicit images with anyone. Once you do, they're no longer in your control. We can't have any idea what that person's going to do with that content. Goodness. All right, how to avoid an online sextortion scam. We went over some of this, but it's worth reiterating. Make your social media private. Block or ignore strangers. Be suspicious of anyone if they ask you to move to a different platform. Remember, anyone can pretend to be anybody else when they're online. The internet is the great costume, if you will. Videos and photos are not proof that a person is who they claim to be. We just saw that with that creepy zipper photo. Minors don't get in trouble with the law enforcement for sending coerced nudity. I talked about that with the different statutes in Arizona that we went over. I would encourage you to report any extortion. A lot of these do come back to Nigeria, but if we have a local suspect who's meeting with local juveniles, it's very valuable to us that we do everything we can to prevent that from happening. You can request that your images be removed. I'm going to show you a better version of that slide that's got a QR code. It's a pretty cool development in some technology. And remember, as embarrassing as this is to you, you are not alone. It's happened to many others. My unit probably has anywhere between 15 and 20 of these cases at a given time. And some of these cases, if the victims are adults, we send them to our financial crimes unit just to kind of spread the workload a little bit. So as many as we have in my unit, there's other cases by other detectives being investigated. So what have we learned? Don't provide personal information to people on your social media profile. These suspects are really clever. They're really good at what's called social engineering. So if I was a high school football student and I posted myself in my jersey that said Perry High School, when they do the thing to extort me, they can say, I'm going to call everybody at Perry High School. I'm going to email the principal at Perry High School. And what they do is they take those personal pieces of information that are depicted in your photos and they make those threats seem infinitely worse. So be cautious of what you're putting on, especially, like Burke said, if it's a public profile. If you do happen to find yourself in this situation, don't stay silent. Help is available. You guys, you're very fortunate if you live in Gilbert, Chandler, Queen Creek, because you all have police departments who take these things very seriously. We're some of the safest communities in the entire United States. And we are police departments that have better staffing than some of the bigger municipalities. And with that, we have the option to investigate more cases to a higher degree than some of our busier counterparts. So This is something that we will literally run to the end of the earth for if we can arrest a suspect and prevent further exploitation of our juveniles. So remember that the predator is to blame. If you have a conversation with your kid or your juvenile that this happened, there's going to be that moment where you want to react and you want to be mad at that juvenile, you want to be mad at that teenager, but please place the blame where it belongs, and it's on the predator. There we go. Get help before you decide to pay the money. In my experience, even if you pay the money, you are likely to have your photos divulged or disclosed to other people. As soon as you pay, all you've done is let the suspect know that you are an easy mark and that they will start asking you for more money or different kinds of compensation. You can report the predator's account to the platform safety feature. Most of your, at least major social media applications, Instagram, Snapchat, have some sort of safety feature or some sort of security page where you can report suspicious behavior. However, do not delete the profile or the messages. Something that's very valuable to us in law enforcement is the ability to look at those screenshots and identify usernames and specific information about suspect accounts so we can write search warrants to get additional content. So, NCMEC is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and one of their new developments is a way to get content scrubbed from the internet. I'm not going to get into the weeds of it, but NCMEC has a database, a list of all the known photos and videos that constitute child sex abuse material. And when you take a photograph or you take a video, it has what's called a hash value. And a hash value is nothing more than like a digital fingerprint. Each photo is unique, just like each fingerprint is unique. And what they do is they have a database that they provide to Snapchat, they provide to Facebook, they provide to Instagram, so that each of those social media companies can scrub their user content up and down so that if I identify one of those photos that's on that database, they can flag that account and remove the content from the internet. So NCMEC, their website, has provided a link and a step-by-step walkthrough that if you're the victim of this crime, you can upload your images and videos to NCMEC, which is a reputable website, and they will add it to their database so that it can be scrubbed against other social media applications and removed from the internet. And I think we have a QR code for that. Maybe?
That should be right after this slide.
If you take anything away from this presentation, I suggest that this be something that you take a photograph of. This is something that we're trying to disseminate as a police department because in my experience talking to parents or talking to my detectives who are talking to parents, the million-dollar question is always, all right, this terrible thing happened to me. How do I undo it? And for years, there has not been a way to undo it. And I'm not going to lie to you and say that this takes it off of every application. It doesn't take it off the suspect phone. It doesn't prevent that suspect from text messaging it to other suspects. But it does at least take it off of the primary social media applications, which is a pretty valuable resource. I think we have a few slides from Chandler Schools, and then we'll open for questions.
Thank you, gentlemen. Yeah, thank you. Hi, I'm Lisa Palella. I'm the principal over at Payne Junior High. I appreciate all of you coming tonight and all of you viewing online. We do have a few slides that we want to review with you. Give me a second. As we get the first slide up, as you know, in secondary and CUSD, we are one-to-one with Chromebooks. Your students' Chromebooks come with safety devices. They have a filter on them that searches or prevents them from accessing harmful material and inappropriate material. This also will prevent them from accessing inappropriate material at libraries, restaurants, anywhere that there's an accessible Wi-Fi, not just at school, including in your home, okay? We also, with the filters, one of the filters we have, is Lightspeed. We get notifications 24/7 on Lightspeed. If they search a word, if they type part of it in, if it's on a document, they look for an image, we get notified 24/7. We get notifications for high risk. The notifications we get are for self-harm, violence, explicit material, and bullying. We get on average a couple, 3 on a weekend, sometimes at high risk. And during those ones, we will also contact the parents as well. But we get notifications all the time for anything that a student will be typing in that's inappropriate material. And it's to keep them safe in collaboration with Gilbert PD, in collaboration with CUSD. We want to make sure your kids are using their Chromebook appropriately. When we get a notification, the process is we get a screenshot or a document. It's sent to us, and the administrators and district personnel. Depending on the content and the severity of it, police and or parents will be contacted and will follow up within 24 hours, even on the weekends, folks. So especially those high risk, we do get those notifications.
And this is for every site, every Chandler Unified School. Every school has a team that works on that. And so typically, the principal will get notified, the district administrator will get notified, and then typically an assistant principal or a dean. And like she said, this is going 24/7 on the weekends. It's all the time. It never gets shut off. So there's always somebody that is looking out for the safety and well-being of your kids throughout the whole Chandler district.
I'm going to have Natasha Davids come up and talk a little bit about some of the resources we have for students that if they get notified. If we get notified, or even resources if they are talking about self-harm, violence, bullying.
Yeah, so she was talking about Lightspeed. This right here is the number that you can call or text and the email, and then that kicks the report over to Lightspeed. And then under there on additional resources, it goes to our parent tab that's under the Department of Counseling website, and I've added a bunch of different types of resources on there in regards to setting healthy boundaries with technology, because as it was mentioned, I think we need to recognize that technology is not going anywhere, social media is not going anywhere, so what does a healthy relationship look like with technology and social media? So there's books, there's articles, short YouTube videos, there's even a tech family plan, so you can sit down and write out what you guys are agreeing on as a family. But I want to give them time for questions, so feel free to scan the resources and peruse a little bit, but I'm going to turn it back.
All right, we did have a few questions, so we'll knock these out, and then we'll open it up to see if anybody has any that weren't included. The first one is, how has the popularity/availability of AI impacted the occurrence of these types of online crimes, and how has this technology then impacted your investigations? Yes is the short answer. The longer answer is AI, I think, is such a new development that we haven't seen a ton of cases yet. But the basic investigation of the case doesn't change. There's still a suspect account who's making the threat, so we would still write search warrants to the social media applications being used by the suspect account and collect the same information trying to identify that suspect that we would in any other case. Where it's become problematic for us is we have juveniles and adults who are being victimized who haven't even produced nude content of themselves. These AI programs are taking a facial screenshot from social media and applying it to a nude image and essentially saying, hey, I know it's not you, but I'm still going to divulge it to your friends if you don't pay me. So it's definitely something that we've seen a couple times, but it's a new development that I don't think has a ton of experience with yet. Second question is on social media. Is deleted really deleted, or can people still access your pictures, posts, etc.? I hate to do this, but the short answer is it depends, and it depends on the application. There are instances, Burke talked about on one of the slides how suspects can hack into your account or social engineer you to provide information that makes it easy to hack into your account. So even if you delete it, it might still be in a deleted folder, or it might be in, I know, for instance, Snapchat has the for my eyes only or for your eyes only folder that has different application rules than your regular content. So in general, if you delete it from your device and you delete it from your social media, it makes it difficult to access, more difficult to access for suspects, for sure.
And just to follow up on that as well, for those that don't know Google, there's actually some pretty sophisticated things that you can do with Google. You can actually use Google to go in and search for archived information and archived posts. So even if, say, you have a Facebook account and you posted a whole bunch of stuff, but then you close your Facebook account, somebody may still be able to go back and find an archived copy of that through Google. So to kind of answer that question, yes, you can delete it. It may not necessarily delete it from the internet, though.
The next question is, why are social media platforms allowing juvenile nude imagery, and are the platforms responsible as well? So when I talked about the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, I talked about that database that they provide to give to social media so that they can scrub their user content. That's how social media is participating in the overarching idea of trying to prevent this crime from happening. So the short answer is yes, I think they bear some responsibility, but the longer answer is our teenagers are getting on there and they're purporting themselves to be 18 when they sign up for profiles, and then within conversations they change it and say, I'm only 14, I'm only 15. So while these social media applications do bear a little bit of responsibility, they're in a challenging circumstance because they have literal millions of users and they're scrubbing the content of all millions of those profiles, trying to identify suspicious conversations that are taking place. And the way that they participate with NCMEC scrubbing their content for those nude images is very helpful to us because we get a lot of reports directly from social media applications. Another way that they participate to protect our children is they, much like Chandler Public Schools, they scrub the user conversations for triggering words. So they look for instances where one person in the conversation says they're an adult and the other person says they're a juvenile. They look for things like sexual words, sexual trigger words, and they look for certain conversational phrases that are suggestive of grooming. In fact, I had somebody ask me today, they said that they got a cyber tip, which is one of the reports generated by NCMEC, because an adult sent a juvenile an eggplant emoji. And I had never heard that that was possible, but they've updated their language, so to speak, to include abstract things like emojis or things like that rather than just trigger words. And the last question is, what if I deleted my social media account? Can they still post it with my friends group? If they developed access to your friends group, let's say they used that quick add feature before you deleted your profile, the answer is yes, they still can divulge it to your friend group because your friend group has become their friend group. The internet has made the world very small and very accessible. So as soon as they are granted access to that network of people, they still have access to post that information. Do we have any other questions before we finish? I appreciate the questions. I appreciate everybody coming too. I know this is a dreary topic, but we're trying our best to be a little proactive, get some education out there, because that story from Michigan is the story that we're trying to prevent here in Gilbert and Chandler. So that's our hope by getting this information out there.
Thank you, gentlemen. And thank you all for coming tonight. We appreciate you being here and all of you viewing. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you found this information valuable. I know when Gilbert PG came to Ms. Patterson and myself, we found it very valuable, and we wanted to get this information out to you. We want to make sure our students are safe, and we want to make sure they know that they have resources and people to come to if they're not feeling safe. If you have any questions after this, sometimes after you go home or after a presentation you process, please feel free to reach out to either Gilbert PD, Heather Patterson, or myself. We'll do our best to help you in find the resources or answer your questions. I want to give a special shout out to our media crew here at Perry and to Heather Patterson for letting us use her facility. And a special thanks to Christine Gonzalez and Brian Bernier for the behind the scenes to make sure it streams live and having the presentation up there. Thank you. Drive safe. Good night.